Before Detroit became synonymous with abandoned houses and crime tape, it was a city of opportunity. Before Eminem showed the world 8 Mile, hustlers like Maserati Rick and killers like the Best Friends gang ran the Motor City with an iron fist. Before Motown became murder capital, before the drugs, the bodies, the empty houses, there was promise. And buried inside that promise was a pressure cooker. Out of that pressure came men who didn't need to speak loud to be feared. Men who didn't run empires, they enforced them. One of those men was Nathaniel Boone Craft, a hitman so effective they called him the Grim Reaper, a killer whose work helped fuel one of the most powerful black drug empires in American history. The Lost Docs presents Confessions of a Detroit Hitman, the Nate Boone Craft story. In the early 20th century, Detroit exploded as black families migrated north during the Great Migration, escaping Jim Crow laws and chasing jobs in the booming auto industry. Neighborhoods like Black Bottom and Paradise Valley became cultural hubs, rich with music, business, and ambition. But opportunity came with limits. Redlining, police brutality, and economic segregation boxed black Detroiters into overcrowded neighborhoods with few legal paths to power or wealth. By the late 1960s and early 70s, those pressures erupted. The 1967 Detroit riots left 43 people dead and entire neighborhoods scarred. As factories closed and jobs vanished, a new underground economy filled the void with hustlers, pimps, and organized street crews. Violence and murder became the new currency in the Motor City. Born in 1957, Nate Craft, or Boone, as his friends and family called him, grew up in the east side of Detroit. His parents worked hard trying to provide a better life for him and his siblings. Seeing his family struggle to get by made Boone realize he had to make it for himself. When Boone was 9 years old, he and his friend Germ would watch the action surrounding his neighborhood. The two would watch the ins and outs of a local drug house across the street. Boone knew there was a lot of money coming out of the abandoned house, and he wanted a piece of it. So one day, Boone and Germ decided they would rob one of the drug dealers coming out of the house. They put on ski masks and went to work. They ended up robbing the dealer, shooting him in the leg, and taking his duffel bag. After running back to his house, Boone realized what they took was not a bag full of money, but a bag full of heroin. Boone knew that what he took was something powerful and worth a lot of money. Seeing his family struggling with poverty, he knew this was his opportunity to make a change. After selling all of the drugs, the two friends had enough money in their pockets to last them a whole year. But Boone wasn't satisfied. He wanted more. The only problem was, how do you get more drugs? So Boone devised a plan. He and Germ would go to the source, the boss who ran the drug house across the street. The man's name was Charlie, and his reputation was that of a ruthless drug dealer. When Charlie laid eyes on the 9-year-olds, he didn't take them serious at all. Boone knew this was his opportunity, and he wasn't taking no for an answer. Boone told Charlie about the robbery at one of his drug houses and that he and Germ were the ones responsible. Charlie was impressed and offered the boys a job. Boone's path down a treacherous road began. He had a knack for the drug business, even more so as an enforcer who recouped any money not paid to Charlie by his customers, but it soon became apparent that Boone had a monster within him, and that monster was about to come out. This aggression that gave him his ruthless nature was molded from days of being picked on as a kid. His reality was either to fight or be beaten by his older sister, who was tired of him allowing others to bully him. That pushed Boone to become a cold-blooded murder machine. Boone's first murder would occur the following year, when he was just 10 years old. And the victim, well, let's just say the partnership with Charlie, was too good to be true. After a disagreement over a pay raise, Charlie would insult the boys, not once, but twice. and after 2 failed warnings, Boone would pull out his .32 caliber pistol and shoot Charlie, ending his life. Once Charlie was dead, Germ and Boone robbed the house. After finding the money and drugs, they buried Charlie in his own backyard. It would be weeks before his body was found. Boone and Germ were never suspected or charged for the crime. After Charlie's murder, the money started to dry up. Boone knew that he had to find a new way to make money, and after committing his first kill, he realized something. He was numb to it. So Boone began making a name for himself, and if the price was right, the person you wanted gone would be gone in a heartbeat. When Boone was 12 years old, he and Germ made an elaborate plan to rob a buy-low grocery store. Armed with guns, the boys made their way into the buy-low, where they were stopped by a security guard. A tussle ensued, which ended with the guard being shot in the face, and the boys fleeing the scene empty-handed. When the police arrived, the witnesses were able to identify the young boys as the culprits. Both Boone and Germ were immediately arrested and sent to a youth home. After an extensive family evaluation, Boone was sent to the Wayne County Child Development Center, which placed him in a foster home. In foster care, Boone couldn't contain his violent nature. He attacked one kid with a baseball bat and another with a fire extinguisher. Tired of his ruthless ways, he was sent to the Hawthorne Center after a psychiatric evaluation by the Child Development Center. Hawthorne conducted their own evaluation. They concluded that Boone didn't have a mental problem, he just didn't have a care for life in general. Boone's anger and hunger for violence were so bad, not even Hawthorne, who dealt with psychiatric kids, wanted anything to do with him, so they let him go home. From there, Boone hopped on a bus headed for downtown Detroit. After making it to the east side, he went back to his mother's house only to realize it was abandoned. Everybody was gone. So Boone then walked to the new location where his family supposedly was. He spent half the day searching up and down the street, but to no avail, they weren't there. With nowhere to go, he walked back downtown and fell asleep at the Grand Circus bus stop. He was now 16 years old, homeless, and eager to get back in the drug game. While sleeping at the bus stop, Boone met a young woman who would welcome him back to her house for a night's rest. That turned out to be a big mistake. At one point during the night, he woke up to the woman getting beat up by a man. When Boone tried to intervene, the woman stopped him and told him the man was her pimp and she owed him money. When the pimp noticed that Boone was in the house, he pulled out his gun and threatened to kill him if he didn't leave. Boone left, but he was furious. He didn't have any family phone numbers, but he did have his friend Germ's. After calling Germ from a payphone, the two met up and made their way back to the prostitute's house. The two friends waited until the girl left before they made their move inside the house. The pimp was asleep when the boys attacked him and shot him multiple times before disposing of his body near a dumpster in the alleyways. Boone went back to the Grand Circus bus stop where he slept on and off for weeks. Eventually, the same prostitute would end up finding him and explaining to him that her pimp, a man named Jerome, was missing. Boone pretended he knew nothing of the circumstances, but did offer to protect the young girl for a 10% security fee. Word spread quickly that Boone didn't harm women and actually wanted to protect them. He was new to the pimp game and didn't like the idea of taking money women earned. So instead, he offered security and protection from Johns and other pimps that wanted to take over Jerome's spot. After some time, Boone fell in love with one of his hoes. With her being pregnant, he decided it was time to settle down and start a family. Leaving the pimp game behind, Boone was ready to go legit. At age 20, he joined the United States Army and was shipped to boot camp. One night, while Boone was home for a few weeks on leave, he and his old pal Germ went bar hopping. After a random woman started grinding on Boone at a bar, her boyfriend confronted him, and the situation escalated quickly. During the altercation, the man sucker-punched Boone and was shot multiple times in the chest. His body was later dumped in the alley behind the bar and wasn't found till the next day. When police arrived at Boone's door to question him regarding his involvement in the murder, Boone denied shooting anybody. But the cops didn't buy it. He was dragged down to the police station and charged with manslaughter and carrying a concealed weapon. If convicted, he was looking at a lengthy prison sentence. Eventually, though, the U.S. Army stepped in and saved Boone from the Detroit Police Department, and all the charges were eventually dropped. After leaving the Army, Boone returned to reality. He knew that working a 9-to-5 was not going to be an option, so he went back to what he knew best, the drug game. But this time, Boone was a different animal. He was now trained by the U.S. Army to kill. Over time, his reputation grew, and with it, his trail of bodies and bloodshed. In the streets of Detroit, he became known as the Grim Reaper. Besides Germ, Boone also had a bond with his older brother William, who at times would help him move drugs. But when a duffel bag of drugs went missing, Boone quickly pointed the finger at William. After confronting his brother, Boone pulled out a shotgun and pointed it directly at William, threatening to blow his brains out. It wasn't until his mother stepped in between that Boone lowered his shotgun and let his brother live. Boone's reign of terror would be short-lived, however, when he was picked up for an armed robbery. He later would admit in interviews that it was in fact his older brother William who committed the armed robberies and not him. To protect his brother, Boone took the hit and was sentenced to 4 years at state prison in Jackson, Michigan. In prison, Boone only became a better criminal. He sold drugs, shanks, and even ran illegal poker games. He soon became the go-to guy for anything you needed in the bin. He allegedly held so much power in jail that he even convinced a female prison guard to smuggle in a gun for him. It was here that Boone adopted the name Iceman because of his ice-cold heart. But according to other inmates, it was because he was willing to knock off a prison guard at any moment. Boone was released on parole after serving only 3.5 years. To understand where Nate Boone Craft fit into Detroit's criminal ecosystem, you have to understand the men operating above and around him, figures who weren't just enforcing violence, they were directing it. 3 names defined that era in very different ways: Demetrius Meech Holloway, Richard Maserati Rick Carter, and the Best Friends Gang. Demetrius Meech Holloway represented the corporate side of Detroit's drug trade. Calculated, structured, and deeply connected, Meech understood power the way businessmen do. He didn't pull triggers. He delegated. He operated behind layers of people who absorbed the risk while he reaped the reward. Meech's world was quiet violence, disappearances, intimidation, and precision. No chaos, no unnecessary attention, just results. Then there was Meech's right-hand man, Maserati Rick. Rick wasn't subtle. He was the opposite, young, flashy, and fearless. Maserati Rick became a legend by doing what others wouldn't do. He wore designer clothes, drove exotic cars, and made it clear he didn't fear anybody in Detroit. Although their personalities differed, their goal was the same. Meech and Maserati Rick wanted to flood the streets with their product and make as much money as possible. But as their operation got larger, so was the need for more muscle. Enter the Best Friends. Hired for security purposes, the Best Friends were created by the Brown brothers, Reginald "Rockin' Reggie" Brown, Terrence "Boogaloo" Brown, Ezra the Wizard Brown, and Gregory "Ghost" Brown. They named the crew the Best Friends because the rest of the gang was comprised of their close childhood friends. For a few years, the partnership between Meech and the Best Friends was cool. Meech had the protection he needed, and the Best Friends were able to make a name for themselves in the drug world. But the Best Friends wanted some of Meech's territory in good faith. They would continue doing hits for him if their terms were met. Being the shrewd businessman that he was, Meech said no. In a matter of days, a full-blown war broke out on the streets of Detroit. The best friends were done working for Meech and Maserati Rick. Eliminating them and taking over their operation was the new mission. And where did Nate Boone Craft fit into all this? We'll get into all that right now. After being released from prison, Boone entered tough man contests at Detroit's famous Cobo Hall. Over the years, he gained respect from locals, knocking out competitors in the boxing ring. One night, Boone would face legendary tough man boxer Butterbean. After winning the bout, Boone was approached by Rockin' Reggie Brown from the Best Friends gang. According to Boone, he was offered a job and more money than he could ever imagine. From that day on, he became part of the Best Friends. Boone was now affiliated and more dangerous than ever. What would conspire in the following years would change Detroit forever. From failed assassination attempts to gruesome murders, corrupt cops and confidential informants, and the rise and fall of the most dangerous gang in the Motor City. Around the same time Boone partnered up with the Best Friends, he also teamed up with Maserati Rick. The two met at a local Coney Island restaurant where Boone had an altercation with an associate of Maserati Rick's. After saving his associate from Boone, Rick asked Boone to step out to his car. The cold demeanor from Boone impressed Rick so much that he offered him $2,000 a week just to watch his back. Rick had the Colombian connect that kept him at the top of the food chain. He also had his childhood friend Demetrius Meech Holloway for protection. But with Boone as his new hitter, Maserati Rick was untouchable in Detroit, or so he thought. Rick's path to success was marred by conflicts and betrayals, none more devastating than his falling out with Big Ed Hansard. What started in friendship quickly turned into bloodshed. The two became sworn enemies, and whenever they laid eyes on each other, a gunfight ensued. According to Boone, one shootout involved him shooting Big Ed in the leg. Boone was down for Rick, but that loyalty would be short-lived. On September 1988, Maserati Rick would finally meet his demise. He was involved in another shootout, this time with Big Ed's top enforcer, Lodrick Parker. The shootout would leave both men injured, with Rick getting shot in the stomach. A few days later, while Rick was in his hospital bed, a man disguised as a doctor walked inside Mount Carmel Mercy Hospital, went inside Rick's room, put a pillow over his head, and shot multiple times. Maserati Rick was gone. We all know about the infamous $16,000 Mercedes-Benz casket that carried Maserati Rick's body. But we ignore the fact that his true killers actually attended his funeral, and some even shed tears. Boone would later admit in interviews who really shot Maserati Rick that night at the hospital. According to Boone, he stayed by Rick's bedside, protecting him from any possible danger. But when fellow Best Friends member Terrence Boogaloo Brown showed up to the hospital that night and gave him an ultimatum, Boone chose the Best Friends. After giving Boone $10,000 to turn the other cheek, Boogaloo then finished off Maserati Rick. If you're wondering why Boogaloo and the Best Friends made their move on Rick, then you haven't been paying attention. You see, when Demetrius Meech Holloway and the Best Friends split, the streets were divided, and the only thing that kept Rick temporarily safe in the streets was Boone. Well, Boone and the Colombian connect that Rick accidentally introduced to Boogaloo. In the end, it wasn't Big Ed Hansard or his enforcer Lodrick Parker who co-signed to end Maserati Rick's life. It was his Colombian connect, and that's how the cookie crumbles. With the Colombian connect and Maserati Rick out of the way, the Best Friends were now stronger than ever. But there was still one op left, Demetrius Meech Holloway. When Meech's feud with the Best Friends started in the mid-'80s, the two crews traded gunshots whenever they encountered each other. In 1986, Boogaloo and older brother Ezra Wizard Brown were both hit in a drive-by shooting. The incident left older brother Ezra Wizard Brown dead. A week later, second to oldest brother Gregory Ghost Brown was shot and killed after attending Ezra's funeral. The word was out, Meech was not to be played with. After Maserati Rick's murder, the best friends only grew stronger, and with that came more drugs and murder in the Motor City. Boone was now on top of the criminal food chain, making anywhere between $20,000 to $30,000 per kill, and Boogaloo, or Boo for short, was slowly taking over Detroit. When Boo's last living brother, Reginald Rockin' Reg Brown, was arrested for the murder of a rival drug dealer, Boo vowed to wipe out all of his enemies. According to Boone, Boo was always paranoid and never trusted anybody. He even turned on his own friends if it meant for him to win and be on top. This would also be Boo's downfall. On November 1988, Demetrius Meech Holloway was eating at a popular Detroit restaurant when two masked men went inside the establishment and kidnapped him. It was later revealed that Meech staged his own abduction. Meech reportedly relocated to Las Vegas, where he married his then-girlfriend. Meech returned to Detroit a few months later, once the heat died out. This would be a grave mistake. On October 8, 1990, Meech was shopping at a popular clothing store in the city when a man walked in and shot him dead. It was reported that the shooter snapped his fingers, said, "Got him," and walked out of the store whistling. According to street lore, Boo was responsible for the murder of Meech in retaliation for his brothers, Ezra and Gregory Brown's deaths. The best friends had won the war. In 1992, Rockin' Reggie Brown had his murder conviction overturned. He was released on bond as he awaited his retrial. But by then, the best friends brought so much heat to themselves that they knew the end of their run was imminent. At the same time, there was also tension brewing between Boone and Boo. According to Boone, he had let Boo borrow his car. When he returned it, he left a bag of crack cocaine in the ashtray. After being pulled over, the police found the bag of crack and arrested Boone for drug possession. This violated his parole, and Boone was sent back to prison for a year and a half. While in prison, Boone received the bad news that his younger brother Andre was murdered. This devastated him. He knew in some way that he was responsible for the death of his brother. When the prison let him attend his younger brother's funeral, Boone spoke to a family member who informed him that it was Boo who was responsible for his brother's murder. According to street lore, Boone's brother Andre owed Boo money and decided to not pay it back in retaliation for setting Boone up with the crack in his ashtray. Boone left the funeral and went back to serve the remainder of his time. The best friends gang now became the worst enemies. Boone, angry and desperate for revenge, did what most in his shoes would do, snitch. So, he made a phone call to the FBI and started giving them info about Boogaloo Brown and the best friends gang. When Boone was released from prison, he laid low. Boo was no fool himself, so it became a chess game of who could outbest the other while still keeping up pretenses. When an associate of his and the best friends was murdered, Boone and Boo both attended the funeral. Boone thought it was the perfect opportunity to try and take him out. However, Boo had his best friends around and was never out of their sight. Instead of pulling out his sawed-off shotgun that was hiding under his coat, Boone approached Boo with a smile and a handshake. Boo, being the master chess player, enlisted Boone to go on a hit, but wanted all of the best friends to go along as well. Boone knew something was fishy. He also had a feeling the hit was just a cover to take him out. He was right. On the night of the hit, Boone paid a cab driver to remain parked as he and the best friends went to pick up the person they were targeting. Sadly, when bullets started flying, the cab driver got spooked and drove off, running into a hail of bullets. The cab driver died on the spot. As Boone turned around to get the car, he felt something pierce his back. When he reached around to check, he saw blood on his hand. Soon after, another shot went through his hand, knocking out a piece of his bone. As he looked up, a shotgun blast sends him flying backward. Like a zombie back from the dead, he got up one more time. this time drawing his gun and shooting aimlessly, causing everyone to run. Nate Boone Craft was hit with everything but the kitchen sink and survived. When he woke up 2 days later at Holy Cross Hospital, the Detroit Police Department was there. But Boone didn't trust the Detroit police. He wanted the FBI. When the FBI arrived, Boone agreed to give up 6 members of the Best Friends gang, including Rockin' Reg and Boogaloo Brown. Boone also confessed to over 30 murders in order to be granted immunity. He was given a 17-year prison sentence instead. The Brown brothers left the state, knowing they would be arrested if they stayed in Detroit. In 1993, the FBI indicted the Best Friends gang on dozens of charges. The feds caught up to the Brown brothers in New York, where they were hiding out. They surrounded them at a BMW car dealership and arrested Rockin' Reg. Boo jumped on a motorcycle and got away. Months later, Terrence Boogaloo Brown was found dead in Atlanta. Rumor has it, his paranoia got the best of him. In the end, it was his own crew that killed him, in fear that Boo would kill them first. Over 53 members of the Best Friends gang were indicted, and there would have been many more if Boo didn't dispose of them first. Rockin' Reggie Brown was sentenced to life in prison. He was released on parole on January 2025. At the height of their career, the FBI said they were the most dangerous gang in U.S. history. They also stated that in 5 years, the Best Friends gang was responsible for over 100 murders. After serving 17 years in prison, Boone went back to Detroit. No witness protection, no security, just an old man running away from his demons. To this day, the only murder he feels remorse for is that of the innocent cab driver, because killing innocent people was something Boone was always against. He now lives a quiet life, surrounded by his family and whatever friends he has left. Boone's story isn't unique because of how violent it was. It's unique because of how predictable it was. When opportunity disappears, violence fills the gap. When systems collapse, the streets build their own structure. And in the city of Detroit, during its darkest years, that structure needed men like Nathaniel Kraft. The real tragedy isn't that he became a killer. It's that in the Detroit he grew up in, becoming one just made sense. Thank you for watching. Food for thought. Was Nate Boone Craft ever loyal to anyone but the almighty dollar? And was he wrong for taking the money and turning his back on Maserati Rick? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button. If you want to see more cool bios on real people, then don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications for more dope videos from
The Lost Documentaries.